I used to do lots of things.
I used to do things and I'd say things and Jesus I was evil. Take things and break things and Jesus I was evil. I never should, baby.
Cut that.
Research purposes.
We'll cut that.
No.
All right. Well, we have a very special guest, a 3-time guest on the Reckless Musecast. Is that the most, Joe?
I think so. We've got a few
How many times
times.
has Alma been on? Alma's been on 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the live show or the in-person show. Yeah.
I am the Alec Baldwin of this podcast.
Yes, you shoot people in the face,
Beat up reporters, yeah.
beat up reporters, and yell at flight attendants. That does sound like you.
One day I'll call my daughter a disgusting pig.
and have a wife with a
Fake
strange
Spanish
like
accent.
Latina complex, which is one of my favorite things ever. I wish she just leaned into it more.
Yeah.
Because it's so perfect. I mean, she's on like one of those shitty morning shows, like doing some recipe, and she pretends not to know what a cucumber is or like what the word for cucumber. How you say in English? It's like, bitch, you're from Massachusetts. Like,
Yeah, and then she should start like exaggerating the accent even more.
yeah,
And then to the point where she's like she doesn't speak English anymore. It's like, we all know you speak English.
Yeah,
you were doing it just fine a year ago.
some of us call that method, Joe, but you wouldn't know.
She's also trying to host SNL. She's coming up with her own character.
I loved that so much. That was one of my favorite things. That and the Republican meeting at the Four Seasons that was at the do you remember this? Like Giuliani during the election, like days after the election, they went to have an emergency meeting at the Four Seasons, but instead of the hotel, they went to some like garden works.
Oh my God,
place.
yes.
And that to me is what SNL and like like that is comedy.
Yeah.
And it's real life, but that would be a clever thing that SNL would do in the olden days. And
Right.
now it was so, I remember crying in my bed at night just thinking about it when that happened because it was so pure and hilarious. And what was so funny about it is like if he even came out, Giuliani even came out and was like, oh, I guess we got the wrong one, like acknowledged it in any way, it would have not been as funny. But the fact that they just leaned into it, like that was where it was. It was like, no, we were supposed to be at this like garden variety store in Montgomery County for this big announcement or whatever it was. Just made it so purely comedic and funny. So those two things, Hilaria Baldwin and that were my two favorite things of like 2021,
Whichever 20.
I guess. Yeah, 2020, but time's a flat circle. Anyway, so Pat, it was about it almost a year ago exactly that I was in LA and you and Vinny were on our show, and I'm pretty sure I blacked out during that show, so I apologize.
That was a great show. I don't remember any of what we said, but
that was a fantastic show. Lots of cigar smoke, and I was just housing those seltzers that I can't find anywhere over here. But Joe had a bunch of, I forget what they are, Joe, if you remember. They have like the skull on them.
Oh yeah.
Like, it looks like the like Dia de los Muertos skull, like some sort of something like that. And they were so good. And I had a bunch of those because we were watching TV Carnage, which I haven't watched since, but it always pops in my head to watch TV Carnage. I miss it a lot. But anyway,
Los Angeles is pretty
of course
amazing.
you can't find those seltzers there. There's no Mexicans in New Jersey.
No Mexicans at all in New Jersey.
Just Puerto Ricans.
Stay in Delaware. Yeah, just Puerto Ricans.
Puerto Ricans and Dominicans. That's it.
Yeah, and some Cubans who got lost on the way.
Yeah.
So it's been about a year, and I still question Joe pretty much every episode why he has resolved to remain in the hellscape that is Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But at least he gets kind of a pass because Joe's a West Coast guy.
Yeah.
Pat, you're a trader and an East Coast guy. So why have you decided to stay there?
Well, I mean, I'm doing comedy, and it's either here or New York City, and I've just no desire to live in New York City.
Fair enough.
None at all. It's not like everything that's bad about Los Angeles, other than the pizza, is also bad about New York.
In a way, but I wouldn't say traffic. I would say traffic.
Yeah, that's right. There is legit public transport in New York, at least.
Yeah,
I'll give you that. But
and as much as I rip on LA, I liked it more than I thought I would. I think that's also because I was with a local. Like that gives you a different experience. But I've also said they could hand out $100 bills on the side of the road, and I wouldn't live there because of the traffic. It's unreal. Joe and I sat at a stoplight for honestly felt like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And didn't move.
I was at one for the entirety of Land of Hope and Dreams yesterday. Bruce Springsteen came on Meet Me in the Land of Hope and Dreams.
The entire song. Oh gosh,
the whole song went through.
Well, hey Pat, so you brought up sort of like the different scenes. Like do you know much about the difference between like the comedy scene in New York versus like in LA?
I mean, not a ton, because I've only done a very little bit of comedy in New York, like maybe like 3 mics. But I know comics in New York are just like super stuck up. They look down on LA comics so much. Yeah. And there's a bit of a reason for it. Like they do have a skill set there that LA comics don't have, which is like the bar show. We don't get a lot of those in LA.
Right.
So they do develop this this way to get people who really, really don't give a shit about the fact that they're talking to pay attention to them, that a lot of LA comics don't have.
Right.
But I mean, to be honest, I don't think, like, I've met comics from New York. It's not like they're all that much better than the comics from LA.
Yeah.
And they just think, I think it's so funny that all these LA comics will be like, dude, all the New York comics will be like, LA comics are so corny. They all just want to be actors. And they'll turn around and be like, so I have a one-man show I'm putting on.
Yeah. I'm always fascinated by like the different comedy scenes because I think like Joe Rogan and what's his face? Who's that other dude from Boston?
Burr?
Louis?
Yeah, Bill Burr. They were talking about how like comics in Boston, like you can make a killer living not ever leaving the city. Like it's just so potent. So you'd be a local hero, and like that's what comedians strive to be. It's just be a local legend, and they don't care about moving out that much.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you can be like, I don't know how you could afford a house being a guy who never leaves Boston doing comedy. You know what I mean? It's nowhere's paying that much for you to like do sets at a comedy club unless you're selling out that club multiple times a week. You're not making a lot of money being a comic if you're not touring.
Right.
Is it is like what would for comedy, not just venues, because I know people would say like Madison Square Garden or something, but like they have everything there. The Knicks games, they have, all types of concerts and things there. But like just for a comedy event, as far as comedy venues go, like what is the gold standard or like the mecca for comedians? And like in LA, is it the Comedy Store?
Yeah, I think worldwide it's got to be the Comedy Store. I think
over like the Comedy Cellar.
Yeah, I mean the Cellar's for sure second place.
Okay.
Like I'm sure there's people who will argue it's the other way around, but I think the Comedy Store is such a big deal. And I'll put it this way: I think there's more people who come from New York to perform at the Store than there are people who come from LA to perform at the Cellar.
All right. Do you travel? Do you ever do comedy outside of LA?
I have, but it's not a lot, just because like it's not financially responsible for me right now. Like, I know guys who will like go on the road. I'm like, dude, where do you get the money to do that? I don't. You're doing the comedy pretty much for free. What are you, just losing $1,000 doing comedy?
That's what I always wondered when you hear about kind of these war stories from comedians, and like they would drive to some small venue and then drive, maybe go do a gig on a college campus and then drive back, and they're getting paid like $120 total. And at the end of that, it's like after you spend money on gas and just kind of your time, like I guess it's worth it because you have to hone your craft. But I mean, it never made economic sense to me.
Right. Well, especially when you hear about that stuff like before social media, because I mean, at least with nowadays, like you can post, you can record like your sets and post them on social media. But it's like back like in the 80s and 90s, it's like you're a no-name comic. It's like, oh, like I'm gonna pass out flyers in Tucson, Arizona. Hopefully someone will remember me next time I pass through or something like that. That always just boggles the mind.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that was like the only way to get your name, other than like getting on the Tonight Show. Maybe that was the only way to get your name out there back then, because there was no social media where someone in Iowa could see you. The only way to get someone in a different state to see you was go to that state.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it does seem like I have to pay rent. Yeah. I can't be blowing money doing zanies in Nashville because it's a $700 plane ticket.
Right.
What,
and then the show only pays like $100 or whatever.
Yeah.
So
if that.
So speaking of paying rent, you said you got a big boy job.
I did.
Congratulations.
Well, and we're sorry.
Yeah. These aren't real glasses. These are blue light glasses. That's how far gone.
These are also blue light glasses.
I just stare at a computer all day.
Yeah, these are also blue light glasses. What do you want to share with the class? What your new job is, or is it is it double secret probation?
No, it's out there. It's on LinkedIn, because I'm on LinkedIn now too.
Oh no, Pat.
Yeah, I had to reactivate my LinkedIn page from college.
please, I hope somewhere on your resume it says proficient in Microsoft Word.
Oh, not well, it can't, because I'm probably not.
That's my favorite.
The last thing I had on my LinkedIn profile, I think, was vice president of standards for the Interfraternity Council at Penn State.
Yeah,
before I got this job.
So drank a lot and collected $5 at the door, handed out plastic cups. Yeah, hells yeah, dude. Penn State did it. So I went to some fraternity parties at Penn State. They were very fun.
The school is a good time. Who did you know there?
I knew some people from Milburn, but I really didn't go to see them. My best friend in college, his best friend where he grew up. Well, actually, he grew up in Tokyo. But he was an American, and his best friend from Long Island went there. So we visited him. He actually had two, and visited him. And he was in, I don't remember, Sig something.
I probably don't know him.
Yeah. But we would go. And then even it was really cool because even like the next time I went, I was even with my friend. I was with other friends, and he still like treated us great. It was like, come to our place. And now we're friends.
Oh, I mean, it was the most fun point in my life by such a wide margin.
Dude, it was so wild being in this frat house, and like, because I was also in a fraternity, but like a small one and a local one. It was like totally different. I went to a tiny school, but it was like downstairs, there's TVs and ping pong tables and places to eat. And then upstairs is like everyone just kind of has their single bedroom. I'm like, you can't beat it.
Yeah, I mean, our house was definitely not that. He was definitely in Sig Chi if his house was that nice.
It might have been Sig Chi.
They all had singles. But yeah, like, it was for a college life, it was pretty great. Like, I lived in a room by myself for most of the time I lived there. We had a chef that, chef in quotes. She was a lady from Bellefonte, PA, who smoked cigarettes most of the day. But she made food for us, and she took care of us. And she couldn't spell fridge. But she was a great lady.
It's all right. As long as she could locate it.
Exactly.
So I forgot how we got on this. But your job. What do you so you've joined the dark side?
Yes, I have. I'm in sales at a tech company now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Rough.
No, yeah, there's nothing douchier sounding. If you just told me like, oh yeah, I know this guy who's in sales for a tech company. Oh god.
Do you have a cubicle?
What a piece of shit.
Really? This reminds me of Office Space. He's like changing ones to zeros on TPS reports.
No, I call. We sell like software to governments basically.
Oh,
so I just call governments all day long, and no one picks up the phone.
Just like Djibouti. It's like, you guys want more shit?
No, only in America.
Oh, governments? Local governments?
Yes. If you've ever wondered why nothing works in this country, no one in your local government is picking up the phone. I'm talking about police stations, fire departments, parks and rec. None of them answer the phone.
Yeah.
Well, they got better shit to do, which is anything but answer the phone from sales.
Like embezzlement takes up a lot of their time, and corruption takes up a lot of their time.
Murdering the citizenry.
Right. Yeah. Do you think you're going to get a lot of material from your new job? A lot of that, like, have you ever noticed that kind of stuff.
I don't think a ton,
really connect with the working man.
Yeah, I don't think a ton, just because like again, the human interaction is really limited. And I work from home. So it's not like
so you don't even get
really
that
working with people.
You work from home 100%?
Oh yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So why were you late?
Oh, I had to go pick up poop bags for my dog. I left the house at 3 right when I finished work, and it took me an hour to get to the grocery store. That's roughly
like a mile away,
a mile and a half away.
That's so insane. That's what I've heard. It's like to get anywhere is an hour. I mean, my girlfriend's sister lives in LA, and I was talking to her husband, and he's like, yeah, and get in the car, it's an hour.
No.
That's
do you know which neighborhood they live
I
in?
know it's the Valley, and I know it's like really far to the west. Like I can picture on a map.
Yeah.
Like I have a general idea of what the Valley is, and I know it's like real. Is it near like Topanga? Is that?
Oh yeah.
Would that be over there? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Somewhere over there. Yeah.
I've been here 5 years. I barely know where anything is. If I don't drive to it on a regular basis, I'm like, it's somewhere.
Where do you live, Pat?
I live in North Hollywood.
What's your exact
Valley?
address?
Yeah, we want coordinates.
I live really close to where Bert Kreischer used to live.
Oh yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Bert's
His
great.
sister lives there now.
Do you know him?
No, we haven't met yet. I've seen him.
Oh yeah.
Next to him.
Yeah. Is he big?
He's fat. Yeah, he's very
fat and alcoholic.
You know what's crazy? He's like a phenomenal athlete, actually.
Yeah, he's an athletic dude.
And like was very fit and just does not give a fuck.
No. Well,
I saw
Van
Eric
Wilder
Wareheim.
is about him.
What was that?
Van Wilder is like.
Yes,
like
yeah, I do know that. There's some article in, was it Rolling Stone or one of those, like back in the 2000s or 90s about him. Yeah. It's amazing.
I mean, it's so insane to have watched that movie as like a teenager and just like formed all these memories about it, and then I become a fan of this guy.
Yeah.
And then he's the fucking guy I was watching the movie about.
Yeah.
Also, it's hilarious that Ryan Reynolds played Bert Kreischer.
Yeah, I was gonna say he wasn't that good looking. Bert wasn't that good looking, but were you a 5-year? Were you on the 5-year plan at Penn State?
Well, I never graduated.
All right. I know you're
I was more of a Tommy boy. I was in the 7-year plan.
That's like Van Wilder. I think he did 7 years. Yeah,
exactly. Except he managed to graduate in the end.
Why don't you go graduate?
I just stopped going to class, really. And then I got to a point where it was like I would rather. I got like not to get too heavy, but I got like super fucking depressed at one point in my life because I wasn't doing anything. I was a fucking loser, and I was upset about that. And I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and I couldn't find the motivation to just to go to class. I would, I'd start a semester and I'd go for a little bit, and a few weeks in, I'd be like, fuck it, I can't do this.
You weren't riveted by gender studies 101?
No, I wasn't. And
Well,
then, like, after
literature.
Not showing up for a week, I was like, well, I can't go now. They're gonna
Yeah.
they're gonna notice.
Where you been? Can I ask? Does your new employer know that you didn't graduate?
I believe so. I didn't put anything about college on my resume.
Oh, okay.
That's good.
That's fine. Yeah,
We can cut that if you want.
no.
It's a sales job. Like they call you up and be like, "Hey, are you retarded? You are. We might still hire you."
Can you call a bunch of numbers that no one's ever gonna answer the phone?
Yeah, exactly.
For this sales job, you need to be a really good linebacker. What's your experience in that?
There's literally just like they'll call you and be like, "All right, so can you talk to other human beings?"
Yeah.
I can. Whoa, good start.
I actually bet though putting a comedian on your resume would be good for sales.
I did.
Yeah.
Oh.
I bet that would help. Be like, you're personable. You can do crowd work.
Yeah, I was actually a couple. And like, listen, I applied to like 1,000 fucking jobs, and like 5 got back to me. But all 5 of them were like, "Yeah, you stuck out because you put this on your resume."
Yeah, and proficient in Microsoft Word.
Yeah, of course. That's on the header.
At the last company I worked at, it was a Silicon Valley startup, and I was just going to be. This is, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. I know, it's pretty douchey, but I didn't have a whole lot of work experience, but I had a degree in music, and so like I was interviewing with the CEO, and so he's going through my resume. He goes, "Yeah, we were impressed with your day, and blah blah blah." So how does your background? How do you think your and you can tell he's making up questions on the spot, and he's like, so how do you think that your background in music will contribute to your marketing experience? I made up some bullshit about like creativity and making stuff for an audience or something, but it's like, but you could tell. How does? What about this? Do you think it'll help you being a good marketer? And it was like, yeah, studying the guitar will help a lot with that.
He started the question and didn't know where he was finishing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
he mad-libbed his
just mad-libbed with my resume.
Think about, you should have been like, well, your product are the notes, and I am the piano playing the notes, and you are and the customer is the audience. I would have hired you.
I just made up some stupid bullshit about creativity, and then he was like, I've never heard that answer before. It's like, well, I've never heard that question before. So
yeah, well, you probably never interviewed a music major for your marketing job before.
Well, that's what you do on this podcast, so.
But you're still doing comedy though, Pat, right? Like you're still doing like open mics, you're still doing shows and stuff. Like
still grinding.
So how often do you perform?
My goal is generally get on stage 5 times a week.
Nice.
Damn.
And my other goal is at least one. I want at least one of those a week to be like a show, like not an open mic.
Right.
Do you have like local spot, like regular spots, I should say?
As far as mics go, man, I do the fourth wall like at least once a week. It got to the point where I had to like tone it back a little bit because you get too used to a certain place, and like, man, that place has a fucking personality where you can really say anything.
Nice.
That's fun.
It is fun, but like it's tough when you go from the animals who are there, who like love when you're making jokes about anything. Yeah. And you do that in front of an audience. Like, what the fuck? I used to do a joke about how I'd be good at being a Nazi, and it killed every time. The whole premise was because I could change my mindset to enjoy strip clubs. I would have been great at being a citizen in the Nazi regime. And it killed at fourth wall. Regular people would hear it and be like, I don't get it. So he's bragging about being a Nazi.
Yeah. Right. I was gonna ask what generally crowds are like in LA, but I guess it matters on the venue. Like place like Fourth Wall sounds like a fun place where anything goes.
Yeah, well, it's also like an open mic place. So when I'm doing mics at Fourth Wall, you're only doing it in front of other comics.
I gotcha.
And comics are animals.
Yeah. Well, even the Comedy Store, like the audience can get pretty uptight. Like I've been to a few shows there, where they have like a whole bunch of. Sometimes they actually have pretty big comedians, like they'll have like Theo Von and Chris D'Elia before he got Me Too and stuff. But like they'll have guys who are it's like you just kind of stayed at the Comedy Store level. You maybe open Tonight Show or something, but you never really got big or anything. But just dudes, you just spent like the last 30 years performing at the same place. But every so often, there'd be a comedian who'd go up and then start making some, un-PC jokes, and then the audience would freak out. And it'd always be like from an older comedian who's like, "What? Like this joke killed 15 years ago," sort of thing.
Yeah, but, I mean, I think there's definitely some of that. I mean, it's Los Angeles. There's for sure people who are just going to get upset about kind of whatever you say. And I will say there's an amount of like, if you make a joke, I've had this issue tons of times. Like if you make a joke that's like about race or about gender, about sexuality, and it's not anti any of those things. Yeah. But if you bring it up, and especially as a white guy, people just pull back, and they're not going as far as being like, fuck you, you can't talk about that. Yeah. But like you have to win them back just because you brought it up.
Right.
So
which is a shame, because I mean, and I know Rogan talks about this. There's a difference between racist jokes and racial jokes.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Like, the subject of the joke isn't always the target of the joke,
which is really what's changed a lot, and not just jokes and comedians, but kind of anything. It's like the topic itself is off limits, instead of like it used to be a handful of words maybe, or like really certain positions on something. Like Nazis are good, like Pat was saying. But now it's just like to bring up anything, even if you're criticizing that thing, is now an issue, at least for not everyone, but at least for like a slice of the population, and especially a slice of the population that is in a lot of control of certain like platforms, and people in power, like a lot of professors and people who, you know, basically control speech, even if it's just kind of a what's the term I'm looking for, like a like that keeps speech from happening. What am I trying to say here? What's the free speech term, Joe?
I don't know. You're the lawyer.
I know. I am the lawyer. I should chilling effect. That's it. Even though it's like a chilling effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was Ari Shafir, though. He said that, you know, now in many ways is a great time to be a comedian because comedy's dangerous again. So it's sort of like,
and I agree. I agree with that in a way too. That's if, you know, then your bank doesn't freeze your account because you made an unsavory joke. Like it could be literally dangerous. So like your financial well-being, which I think sucks. Like if it's just criticism or catching flack, which is also part of free speech, which is fine. That's great. Like you can be criticized, but that's not what happens a lot. You get, you know, you lose things. You lose opportunity. You lose income, which I think is just ridiculous.
It's you know, it's funny you brought up the freezing the bank account thing. I've been trying to like figure out a good way to make a joke about that. It's like, whoever's, and like I'm gonna have to preface it with like, I like Jewish people more than I like Kanye West. I hate Kanye West. I like Jewish people, but whoever's running PR for the Jews has to be fired.
Yeah,
it's like like imagine going into your meeting with your people. And you're like, all right, guys, Kanye has brought up that disgusting stereotype again about how Jewish people run all the media and control all the banks. What do you think we should do?
Well, he's right about that, right? Yeah, it doesn't matter. He's right. He's saying
step one, we should have everyone in the media discredit him. Good point. What next? Kick all his money out of the banks. All right, so we're just leaning into this, huh?
Right.
All Hollywood executives who'll never work in this town again. Cool. I agree. Oh man. Yeah, it's been a crazy couple of weeks on Twitter with some crazy.
I think it's fun. I just tweeted, I'm just here for the meltdown. Like it's getting kind of annoying though, to be honest. I can only see a blue check lose their shit like one too many times. Where it's like, can we? The cycle is for once like not moving fast enough. It's and I can't stand that. Did you see AOC's latest thing, dude? Look. She bothers me for a lot of reasons. Some of it's political. I agree with her on some political things. Some of it I can't fucking stand. But her demeanor drives me insane. And no, it's not because I want to fucking date her. It's because I want to, like, this newest video, she's talking about like being shadow banned or something dumb. And she's eating a chicken nugget or like a chicken finger, like peeling it apart. It's like a very much like a hey fellow kids moment. Like kind of like, oh, I'm cool. And just like, it's like, what the fuck are you doing? You're a member of Congress. Like, what are you doing? Put the chicken down, finish chewing first, and then talk to your constituents or to your followers or whatever. It really drives me nuts.
She did a video similar to that in that same style a few years back. And she was like sitting on her floor of her apartment in her fancy apartment. And she's just like, you know, bare feet. She's eating like ice cream out of the carton or something. And she's like, so basically in like 12 years, like because of global warming, like humans are going to be extinct. And it's like, oh, come on. Like,
I can't
like there are better ways of conveying that message, but it was just like, it was just kind of coming off as like this hip millennial.
Yeah. Well, we did this thing in American politics where elitism became bad. And now none of the people we have running the country are elite in any way. They're all a bunch of morons.
They're not like legitimately
want them to be elitists.
They're not elite in like the way that a William F. Buckley or someone used to be elite. Like he could be, there could be some snobbery there, that kind of old school fat cat conservatism, but at least like, I don't know, there's something to it more, even if I disagree with him on a lot of things.
We pander to idiots now.
Now it's like elite as in you have in this house we believe you know lawn sign and the Ukraine flag and the margaritas after yoga or whatever, kickboxing or whatever, like Jen Psaki said. Like, it's that fucking annoying kind of elite. I miss the old school elite, even if I would like rail against them, that old school kind of like snobby elite that really just doesn't exist anymore.
Monopoly, that money bags guy.
Yeah.
Monopoly sort of thing.
People, they want their politicians to be relatable now instead, which is like the majority of the country should not relate to the person running it, because most of the people are failures.
Yeah.
This is how we ended up where we are. Yeah. You got a bunch of morons to relate to the people running the whole show.
And and in that vein, the best was the Dr. Oz. When do you remember he's in the supermarket and they're trying to get him to be relatable, and he calls raw vegetables crudité. It's like, man, I could just picture his GOP like consultants being, no, you fucking idiot. Just say celery sticks.
They should elect him just off the fact that he says crudité. Like, this guy's a fucking winner.
Crudité. It's like,
when's the last time you met a homeless person who knew the word crudité? Okay,
it was so goddamn funny because he's going through the supermarkets, which he fucks up the names. He gets because I went to school in Pennsylvania, so I know it's Wegmans and Redner's, and he calls it like Wegner's or something. Like, he fucks up the names, and then he calls it. He's like going through. It's like, oh, this costs $8. Usually it's $4. It's like, huh? And my wife loves her crudité and hummus. It's like, motherfucker, you sunk us. Even though now he's probably gonna win because Fetterman can't string two sentences together.
Didn't he have a stroke or something?
He did, and they shot themselves in the foot with that because they just approached that the wrong way. There should have been like, yeah, he's still the same guy. He has, these issues. He's improving, but like he still struggles with this. But so do a lot of people, they could have spun it in a good way. Instead, they came out with, if you see this and say anything, you're ableist. It's like, that's not going to fly either. It's like, that's just swinging in the other direction. Yeah.
Way to bring in the moderates with that one.
I mean, that's what they did. And Fetterman was up by like 10, 12 points in a lot of polls like a few months ago. And now I think they're either dead even or odds.
Well, yeah, because he was running against a fake TV doctor.
Right. From New Jersey,
like pills to people.
From New Jersey, basically, or who owns like 6 houses. You're gonna make him kind of more relatable to the Pennsylvania voter now, who says crudité. Yeah.
But Pat, do you respect Brendan Schaub as a comedian?
No.
Okay, good. Just making sure.
Who's Brendan Schaub?
He's this Joe Rogan regular. Him and Brian Callen.
He was on The Ultimate Fighter, and he was a good fighter. He was never like one of the best, but I think he may have fought for the belt at one point. And then
he's
Joe Rogan,
fighter turned comedian.
Yes.
Joe Rogan convinced him. He's like very good friends with Joe.
Yeah,
and Rogan like convinced him to retire basically live on air on his podcast.
I think you'd be surprised. Yeah.
And so then he started doing comedy, and because he was friends with Rogan, started doing spots at the store like immediately. And he's like wildly famous and rich and successful. But he's also not he's not good. Like he has multiple Showtime specials. He had a Showtime special, I think, after a year of doing comedy. And I've seen him live. He's a bad comic.
He's terrible. And then did you see his latest one, the one on YouTube, the 27-minute one or whatever?
I didn't watch it, but I heard
it's
pretty
really fucking bad. I won't go into details, but it's I had to listen to it in like 2-minute increments because it was so like, I can't take this. There's just like a morbid curiosity. Just
I watched one bit.
Yeah.
How is he bad? Like if we want to get into like nitty gritty comedy stuff, because that's what you do, Pat.
I mean, he's just not very funny. Like, you know how like when you listen to music and you're like, you know that the episode of The Sopranos where Adriana is like trying to rep a band.
Oh yeah. My friend Mikey's got a band. Yeah.
And what's his name? Hesh is like, a hit's a hit. It's the same thing with comedy. Like funny is funny, man.
Yeah.
And he isn't. Like there's nothing special about anything he says.
There were a couple of in the entirety of a 27-minute thing, there were like a couple of mildly chuckle-worthy jokes, but it could have been like, oh, like anybody could have made that joke like on the spot, like as a pun in a conversation. They weren't like, oh, this is something that a regular comedian would have polished over months and months. It was just sort of like a dumb little. It was like, oh, I see what you did there. But I remember one of the jokes is because he's married to a Mexican woman, and like
Yeah.
that
It's like
feel
all
like
his
90
material.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's just so I'm
Yeah.
married to a Mexican man. I love Mexicans, blah blah. And he had this he's some dumb joke about how I think they got into it with their neighbors, and then his wife is like, hey, I'm gonna make some Mexican cookies, I'll bring it over to them, and we'll pass things up. And then Brendan Schaub's like, well, what are Mexican cookies? It's just like regular cookies with salsa poured on them. Like, and that was the joke. Like, it's just like that kind of humor of just like super, like, it was
There's
really
just nothing
funny.
special about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you see that with some comedians, they lean something works. The two that come to mind is it Dat Phan? Is that he does is he Vietnamese?
Yeah.
And he does he does his mom, I think.
Yes.
Like this high-pitched voice, and it's like very, really thick accent because she's an immigrant. And it's like, dude, it's like 45 minutes of the hour is just his imitating his mom.
Mm.
Yeah. Did you ever watch Tough Crowd back in the day with Colin Quinn?
No.
I don't think so.
It was this great show from like the early 2000s where it was Colin Quinn. He would just bring on like a panel of 5 comics, and they would bring up news topics, and they'd all just they'd mostly shit on each other, but make fun of the news a little bit.
Yeah.
And there's this episode that Dat Phan is on, and Patrice O'Neill and Rich Voss are on it too. And they spend the entire episode just calling Dat Phan a hack. And at one point, I can't remember if it was Patrice or Rich. They're like, just say something without the accent. Do something and he can't not do it. Like every time he goes to talk, he starts doing the accent, and then Patrice just cuts him off. Like, say a joke without the accent.
Patrice, Patrice is dead, right?
Yes, yeah.
But he was very funny. I remember him doing a joke. At least I think it was him. This might be racist if it's not him. If it's not him, we'll cut this. But it was like he's talking about how Americans, like, we can be very divisive in America, but if we see each other out like in another country, we're like brothers. It's like he's talking about like how he could see like a full-on clan member in France or something, be like, that's my brother. Like that's like man, that's my brother. I don't know. I remember that one. And also and of course the much more famous comedian Mencia, when he did like the da thing. Dude, at one point I felt like that's all he was doing. It was just every punchline was the like making fun of the retarded person.
I thought Mencia was hilarious when I was in 8th grade.
So did I. I thought he was super funny. But like even when I thought he was very funny, I was like, okay, he's leaning into that too much.
Yeah. He went on Bobby Lee's show recently, and they kind of dug up a lot of the plagiarism stuff from back in the day.
Oh, really?
Did he just admit to it?
Pretty much. I mean, like, he'll never apologize, but it was sort of like, oh, I was just taking inspiration from everywhere, and I wasn't like trying to rip off comedians, but like I'm just, I get inspired by everything, sort of thing. And it's just
but it's like you verbatim said this guy's joke. Yeah. I thought he was more defensive about it, because I thought I had seen him on. I thought it was Bobby Lee's podcast. Maybe it was a different podcast, but I thought he was a lot more defensive. Maybe
it was a long conversation. I think I only listened like 10 or 15 minutes, but I think that whole part of the conversation was like 40 minutes. So I'm sure there were parts where he probably got more like, no, it was everybody else. Everybody else was they're wrong. I was the one who was right the whole time, sort of thing. But there are other times where he kind of admitted. But there are other times where he was like, well, whatever, it happened. It wasn't.
What does he do? What does he do now?
I think he performs like at some places once in a while.
He's still a comedian.
Yeah. And what else is he gonna do?
I don't. That's why I'm asking. I don't know. There's a lot of homeless people in LA. Like, I thought he was one of them.
They live pretty nicely here, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, because
his name's like Ned or something.
Yeah.
Is he like German or something like that?
I think he's half German.
Yeah. I could see him doing very like 43-year-old finance bros, like private events,
probably
stuff like that.
That's like a joke too. It was like, hey guys, wait till you see what I got tonight.
That's so ironic.
No, they probably love it. Like, do the retard stuff. It's a bunch of coked out finance bros. Come on,
talk about how Bush isn't that bad.
I saw Jamie Kennedy perform in Skid Row, which seems like the kind of
What do you mean Skid Row? Is it
it's a place where all the homeless people live in LA.
Like I know that's that's not a comedy venue. That's like
no. There's a well, it was there's a shitty art gallery in Skid Row called the Shit Art Gallery. And I saw Jamie Kennedy go up. There were actually like some more like up and coming comedians. I can't remember their names, but I remember telling Zach about it. He's like, oh yeah, they're actually pretty funny. But yeah, it was Jamie Kennedy. He was the headliner, the comedy show in Skid Row. So I mean, there are places for comedians who are not very good to make a living.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen him before, but. I mean, he was like trying to cancel people for a while, right?
Was he?
And didn't he, Jamie? I thought he was trying to cancel people, and then he got canceled or something like that. I think he was one of those.
Robespierre.
Sounds like it, but and he looks all raggedy and homeless. So I guess Skid Row's kind of the best way for him. But yeah, man. So Pat, you're a comedian. So are you sticking with comedy, or do you have like aspirations of getting into acting at all, or you just want to or writing, or you stick to acting? Stick to comedy.
I mean, ideally it's just comedy for me. Acting is something I'll do. Like I'm acting in someone's like short right now that they're filming. I've done other stuff. Like we filmed the short that we did together. So I enjoy doing acting. I'm not willing to do the stuff it takes to become an actor.
Right.
Like all the shitty open mics and like shitty gigs that I do to become good at stand-up, I'm not doing the equivalent of that for acting. I'm not auditioning for parts that I hate.
Right.
Like I used to be Vinny's scene partner for all his auditions. And every single thing he got, I was like, this is the biggest piece of shit I've ever read. First of all, how are these the things getting made? Like you look at all the stuff that like people write, and it's like good and poignant.
Right.
And then you see the shit that like gets sent out on auditions. Like, what?
Yeah, it's like cable TV shit.
Not like, even. It's just like corny dog shit.
Yeah,
there's a lot of that out there.
Yeah.
Can you tell the difference between a comedian who just wants to be a comedian and like a comedian who wants to get into acting? Like can you kind of tell like, okay, like this person's hamming it up just for the acting, but this one actually cares about the craft of comedy. Can you tell much of a difference?
So I would say you can tell more of a difference between those two and the actor who's doing comedy. You know what I mean? Like there are a lot of comedians who also want to act. Like that's not uncommon at all.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But they're still like legit comics.
Yeah.
But then there's like people who are really actors and like they've decided it would be good for them, whether it's, career wise or just to like for their chops to do stand up. And you could always tell who those people are, man. They're because they go up there and they act on stage.
Yeah.
Like they're not talking. Their stand-up seems like a performance, and you're just like, it doesn't matter what you're saying. Like when people feel like you're performing to them while you're doing stand-up, it usually comes off like bad.
Right.
Are there still comedians who do? I feel like in my prime, like stand-up watching years, like probably the 2000s, are there still comedians who do like either music or props, like have that, because that used to be a thing back in the day, and now I feel like, and then in 2000 I feel like there were guys who were famous for doing songs, like comedic songs, and of
Stephen
course
Lynch.
Stephen Lynch, exactly what I was just thinking of. Everyone knows the puppeteer guy or whatever.
Jeff Dunham.
Jeff Dunham. He's like the wealthiest comedian in America.
Yeah.
Unreal. I never got it. I don't know if you guys like him. I never understood it. It's similar to what we were saying. I feel like he leans into a few jokes like that. I'll kill you. Like that. Bones. Yeah, it is hack. But does anyone like just go up on stage anymore with a guitar?
I can't think of anyone famous who does it. I see some people do it, and like, to be honest, I'm like, every time I see it, I'm like, ugh. I leave the room if I can.
Yeah, because I watched a movie. You ever seen the movie The Godfather of Green Bay?
No.
You should definitely watch this, but Joe, you should too, just because we love kind of strange movies.
Yeah.
But it's about two comedians in LA who one is from, no, he's not from Green. I forget if he's from Green Bay or whatever, but basically they get, and this is in the 90s. So back when we were talking like pre-social media, that stuff. So like traveling it's actually very topical, what we were just talking about. So like they get a hint that that's what it is. Like one of the producers or talent scouts, I don't know how cable TV works or worked back then, is from Green Bay and always goes back for this one like festival every year, some Oktoberfest type thing. And so they have a comedy show at this festival, just in some local bar, some local yokel bar, and they drive there. And it's actually, Pat, you like Always Sunny in Philadelphia, right?
Oh, I love it.
You know, Ponderosa, the guy.
Yeah,
Bill Ponderosa. It's him. It's him, and then another guy who was a comedian. I've heard even Rogan like bring him up, but I think he like completely quit comedy. They drive to Green Bay, and then a bunch of shit happens, and it has some really funny actors, and it has Thomas Lennon, the guy from Reno 911 with the high shorts. He's a comedian who like at first he's doing kind of like real hacky trite stuff, and then he just completely leans into being blue and just like really vulgar and vile and just like like turn the chair around and like smoke a cigarette, just like say really like misogynistic shit and stuff like that. And people and
so funny, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like hilarious. And
he's doing comedy. Oh, okay,
but,
gotcha.
I think the funniest character is not I don't remember who the actor is. I don't know if you guys ever watched I did because my ex would watch it. What's that? It was a Kerry Washington show, a Shonda Rhimes show, Scandal. He's the president in Scandal, is how I remember him.
I remember that guy.
You remember that guy?
For that show, yeah. No.
You're fucking with me. So, he plays this like local guy who's like the big fish in the small pond. His name's Jaker, and he is like he always talks about how great he was at football and could have gone pro and all that stuff, had an injury, and he's fucking hilarious in it. Unintentionally, and one of the, so basically this is a long-winded way of saying the Bill Ponderosa character, he's like he does like a puppet show type thing, like that's his whole act, and in that he's like, I can't go anywhere, like I got one act. So and once you see that, like you can't see him again, like you don't have that repeat customer base. Right. And do you know any puppeteers, Pat?
God, I don't think there's anyone like up and coming who's doing puppet stuff.
So there's a market for it.
Yeah, well, I will say there is this like undercurrent in comedy of like alt comedy, where there are people who very much I must be intentionally do things that are now considered corny. Yeah, like a sort of anti-comedy thing.
Right.
Yeah, and like when Jerry Seinfeld in the episode, he hates that Banya is doing so well after him, so he like purposefully goes to bomb.
Well, it's not even like a bombing thing. They're just like it's like hipsters, you know how they like to bring back old shitty stuff that no one likes.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing where they're like, and there's I'm sure there's someone doing a puppet because I've seen the people who they dress like a comic from the 80s with like the big pants and the weird sneakers, and they go up in there and they do weird fucking 80s comedy. Like, who's with me tonight?
Yeah.
What is happening?
It could be fun. I like the wait, did we talk about the Joe, what's the movie that your roommate collects? That was for
Jerry Maguire.
Everything's terrible.
Everything is terrible. Yeah.
Pat, do you know about this? We had to have talked about. We didn't talk about this last year.
Probably not. I don't remember us talking about.
Joe, can you get the background?
Yeah. So there's a sort of comedy collective, I guess, called Everything Is Terrible. They're the ones who do like the sort of TV carnage. Well, let's take like nostalgic, like weird direct-to-video shit from like the early 90s, but like weird shit. So it'd be like, like here's hip hop dance video for kids or something like that. Like weird
dance grooves, like
or like a weird church thing for kids, a church hip hop dancing for kids or something like they'll take weird obscure things, or like, oh yeah, here's a Ninja Turtle musical from 1992, and they'll just splice all this weird crap from the early 90s together, and like it's just it's just really funny, like how they'll kind of, you know, like they almost kind of create like a weird narrative with these clashes of weird TV nostalgia. Anyway, one of their side projects is they're collecting a bunch of VHS tapes of Jerry Maguire, so that they can build a pyramid out in the desert of Jerry Maguire VHS tapes.
I've never seen anyone lean so hard into something, which is why I think it's so funny. So people are like mailing them Jerry Maguire VHS. Like I have my dad who goes to the gym and library in the beach town where they live is connected. So they go, they're like still VHSs. So I'm like, Dad, if you see Jerry Maguire, you have to get it for me.
And they're still collecting them because like that video that I showed you where they talk about it, that was from like 2017. And so at the time they rented out an art gallery in Echo Park, and there's like, we're just taking donations. It's, you know, it's a VHS store with nothing but Jerry Maguire, and we're taking donations. And they're still doing it. I saw them perform less than a year ago, and my friend, he's got like 4 or 5 copies of it.
So I'm like, Joe, why
that's why you asked.
Copies of Jerry Maguire on your bookshelf?
And then when we went to go to the concert, my friend's like, "Oh, should I bring these?" I was like, "Nah, they're not doing that anymore. I haven't seen any updates." And then at the end of the show, they're like, "Hey, who's got Jerry Maguire?" So they brought up these big sacks, and everybody was just giving them tapes. So it's actually pretty funny. Like that's what
they consulted with an architect.
Yeah, they consulted with an architect. It's like in the middle of the desert, like somewhere between here and Vegas, like just out in like the Mojave Desert, like just out there in the middle of nowhere.
When are they going to build it?
I don't know. I don't know exactly when what the timeline is, but they met with an architect. Like, if we put everything in like, you know, laminate, plastic, so everything's all preserved, it should be able to withstand the sun and blah blah blah. And it's like that's.
I mean, it'd be better if they didn't and it just melted.
It'd just be stuck there.
Yeah,
it's just like 18 years of collecting these things.
Human comedic hubris.
Yeah. I mean, imagine coming like you're in like some Mad Max post-apocalyptic future, and like the building you come across is the VH.
What happened here? I'm so confused.
The Jerry Maguire pyramid. Like think about all the things we try to infer about history from like buildings. What are the future historians trying to get from that?
It was just a bunch of like ancient Nubians just fucking with us. Just think it's hilarious to like do something. It's why did they do this? It's like they had some connection to ancient gods. It's like no, someone was just high and started drawing like creatures with big elongated heads.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the most hipstery things I've ever heard because it's like the reason why they picked Jerry Maguire is because, you know, they shop at thrift stores all the time, and they said like, oh, like when you peruse the thing, it's like we always see like the bright pink cover for Jerry Maguire. So it's like, you guys hang on thrift stores. Yeah, that's a very hipster thing to do.
Well, the VHS itself is like red, right?
It's red, but it's always faded, so it turns like this sort of pink.
But like where it's usually black, it's red, so like stands out. Yeah. Which I don't know why. Like that, you think that'd be like a Power Rangers movie, not like this respectable. like, is it romantic comedy? Like kind of like a romance,
I think
right?
It's just a romance.
Yeah, just like a romance movie. Like I don't know. I think it's so. I thought it was the funniest thing ever when Joe showed me it.
It's pretty cool actually. But well, so Pat, how long have you been living in LA and doing comedy?
5 years.
So I'm curious because I've talked to my roommate Zach about this a little bit. Like, did you notice like any change in the quality of comics, like from during the pandemic versus after the pandemic?
I mean, I do think a bunch of shitty comics quit after the pandemic. Mm-hmm. It was definitely an excuse for people who weren't all in to stop doing it.
Right.
But there's still plenty of shitty comics who do it. Not too many good comics I know stopped because of the pandemic.
Right.
But I'm sure there were a couple.
So a while back, Zach and I, we were kind of theorizing because just to kind of keep his name out there, Zach was doing like, you know, Zoom comedy shows, and which he hated. He fucking hated.
I did it once.
And so we were kind of like, oh, like I wonder if like when things open back up, like, and you know, comedians were forced to do their comedy in front of a camera, like are they gonna suck when they get back out into the stage? Like we're like, oh, I'm so used to having, you know, like doing it in my bedroom, but now I have to like interact with people. And so I was just curious if you notice any kind of like, oh, that person's a bedroom comedian. They got started in 2020. doing Zoom calls rather than like actually going up on stage.
For sure. When it was funny because it reached a point where I was no longer not doing comedy. Like I would go and do the outdoor mics or whatever.
Yeah.
It was still like late in 2020. I was like, listen, I moved out here to do comedy.
Yeah.
There seems to be no end in sight. What am I just going to not do comedy for the next 2 years?
Right.
No, fuck it. I'm doing mics.
Yeah.
And so it was always funny to me when like once like things actually like legally opened up and people could come back, it would be like a year, like I'm talking almost a year after that when people are like, yeah, it's my first mic back since COVID. Like, dog, where you been? It's like I'm talking like a couple months ago. You'd hear people say this. I'm like, just quit.
That's got to be an LA thing. Like they weren't doing that in Texas or I can't even mention New York, man.
No.
But you'd also run into people who would say like, yeah, I started during the pandemic on Zoom comedy, and like inside you're just like, oh, I can tell.
Yeah. Oh man. So what else is you got lined up, Pat? What's
I don't have a ton on the calendar for this month, but I do have a show at the Comedy Store. Let me see if I can.
Oh, cool.
See when that is. Hold on, people. The kid is booked. I promise. Where is the picture of it? That's the question. That is.
I did not like doing trials on Zoom.
Oh yeah. What was that like?
It was weird, and I like working from home. I do a hybrid, and I do like having an office also. Like I like the hybrid model. I think it makes most sense for me. But I did my first trial in a courtroom last week. Yeah, last week, and it was like it's good to be back.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
What kind of law do you do?
I do domestic violence and consumer.
Oh, so the fun kind.
Yeah, I was about to say nice.
Yeah.
Also, what a weird combo: domestic violence and consumer.
Yeah. Well, I'm a legal services attorney, so we do like it's a lot of housing, consumer, some family, like domestic violence. We've always done, but now like divorces and stuff like that, I don't do that. And a lot of like entitlements and benefits and those sorts of things. Those like our main areas. Yeah. They are very different. It's like
really helping out the cream of the crop there.
Yeah. Hey, well, everyone needs help.
Yeah.
It's good because honestly, a lot of times people are just getting like fucked. And sometimes they, it's a mix like anything. Some people totally put themselves in the shitty positions they're in. Other people just got screwed. Like it's a total mix. But yeah, the DV cases can be pretty nuts. Like I've seen a lot of shit. Let's just say in 4 years.
Are you helping the abusers or the abusees?
The abused.
Okay. So then you are helping good. Okay.
Oh yeah. No. I don't represent defendants. God no.
Okay.
Not in the DV. No, I'm not like a public defender. I help the victims get restraining orders.
Well, that's much better.
Yeah. No, I could not help I couldn't be. I thought about when I was in law school, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a public defender and like help. And then it's like, you see what they get paid, their hours, and then like the pieces of human garbage that you're defending. It's like, no, thanks.
No. Yeah. Accused pieces of garbage.
Yeah. A lot of them. And no, and then to be honest, yeah. And it sucks. Like everyone deserves a defense and a competent lawyer and people who are wrongfully accused. It's like, I couldn't imagine anything more horrible than being wrongly accused of a crime, especially when you're poor.
Which are mostly who gets wrongly accused.
Yes, because even if you're rich and you get wrongly accused, you can hire good counsel. But that being said, like the vast majority of them are just like pieces of shit. Like just horrible people. So no, I could not do that for a living. It's very gratifying to do the DV that I do, even if sometimes it's like, fuck, man, this is like deep. Like some of the shit's deep, but
you're helping out. You're on the right side of it.
Yes, the victims. I see, because sometimes I see some of these defense attorneys, and it's just like, man, you don't want to be defending this guy. Like, that sucks, and yeah.
I remember in college, one of my music friends, he was dating a girl who was in law school, and I was like, oh, so what kind of law is she studying? And he goes, property. I was like, oh, that sounds really boring. He goes, no, intellectual property. I was like, oh, that's really useful for a musician.
Yeah.
Hey Pat, is Adam Egan? Is he still at the Comedy Store? Is he still managing that place, or is he still?
I think he's still the booker, but like I don't know him. He's way above my head. I'll go that way.
Well, he's the one who kind of turned the Comedy Store around, didn't he? Like,
yes, I think in a lot of ways he gets credit for that. I'm not like super plugged in at the store. Like they don't book me or anything. The show I have there is through someone who runs a show at the Comedy Store. And every time I've performed there, it's been through that. It's like Adam's got no clue who I am. We've never spoken. But yeah, I mean, I think he kind of took over. And from what I understand, he was kind of responsible for telling like the old guard of comics who used to hang out there who were just like dog shit. He's like, hey, you're not welcome back. Like, you can come back and hang out, but you're not welcome back to perform here.
Right.
We're turning this place into a place where killers come.
Right.
And that was him.
Yeah, and that was like in the early 2000s too, where
there's like a dark age, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently it was bad for a while.
Yeah. And I think he was also responsible for helping get Joe Rogan because I think Joe Rogan was
he was banned.
He was banned because of the Carlos Mencia thing, and I think he was the one who kind of convinced Mitzi Shore to let him back or something.
And to keep it like brief, what was that all about again? Because I watched the Comedy Store documentary and they touch on it, of course.
Yeah.
And I feel like he's talked about so many times on his podcast, like in old episodes, that he doesn't really like to talk about anymore. I don't know if he did back then, but I just get that feeling. So I've been listening to Rogan for like maybe 2.5 years, 2 years, 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So like Mencia was just like stealing his jokes.
Thing.
Yeah.
And they weren't Joe's jokes, but Mencia was up there one night on stage and Joe got up while I was up there.
I've seen that.
Joke and goes, "You stole that fucking joke." And like called him out in front of the audience. It's like, this is someone else's joke. Like, you can't do this. And, at the time, Joe wasn't super famous. Like, he had good money from TV, but like was a successful comic. But Carlos Mencia was a national name, and Joe Rogan wasn't.
Yeah.
So the store, Mitzi took Mencia's side and banned him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so Mencia was already really big. This was
it was while Mind of Mencia was on.
Yeah.
And he was the biggest comic in America at that point. And I think it was actually an Ari Shaffir joke that he was stealing, because I think Joe called Ari on stage. It was like, "This is your fucking joke, isn't it?" Like, yeah, I was doing this like a week ago.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
And it also caused a bit of a rift between Joe Rogan and Bobby Lee too, because Bobby Lee was good friends with Joe Rogan, but he was also close with Ned.
Mencia's opener.
Yeah, that's right. So it's like, yeah, I owe Mencia a lot because he picked me when I was a nobody, but like I also knew that he steals a lot of jokes though too. So he kind of put him in a
it was an uncomfortable situation because Mencia was his meal ticket. And Brian Redband, Joe's like friend, he used to just be his video guy. And so and he used to just like kind of live blog their nights at the store. And apparently he just like took his camera and like got in Bobby's face. Like Mencia steals jokes, right? And Bobby like just kind of was like, And it got out there and it was like a big deal. And Mencia like made Bobby apologize. So that was tough.
Yeah, I remember in that exchange because I watched it not too long ago. But it was like, hey, so can you do some of Mencia's material? And he goes, "Well, I'll just do my material, and it'll be the same stuff." So.
Yeah, man. I'm probably gonna listen to the episodes where it's the Rogan episodes where it's Bert, Ari, and Tom Segura. Yeah. Dude, I laughed so fucking hard with those guys.
I know.
It is absurd how funny they are.
Yeah.
I listened to Bert and Tom's podcast. It's like one of my favorites right now.
Yeah. Two Bears, One Cave.
Yeah, because I mean especially when Bert like starts laughing and can't stop.
Yeah.
And
I love how much they just like, it's like, "Bert, you're fat." He's like, "Yeah, I know." Like, but like in 100 different ways, they just tell him he's fat, and he's like, "Yeah, no, I know."
He's so stupid too.
There was he's got a podcast where he like makes food like he'll have guests on, and then he speaks for them.
Bertha's?
Yeah.
I think it's called Something's Burning.
Yeah. And he had Mark Norman and Bobby Lee on, and Bobby Lee's been on Joe Rogan only once, but this is like back in the early days. And so Bobby Lee's got he's got a bunch of insecurities and shit. So he's like, yeah, I mean, he's my friend, but I feel weird. Like he invites me on, but I don't want to go on a show unless there's a really good reason to, blah, blah. He's got all these weird insecurities. And so Bert's like, yeah, like, how come you don't go on Joe Rogan's show? He goes, I don't know. I feel weird about it. And then Mark Norman's like, hey, maybe Brendan Schaub will get you on. Yeah. But it's just, I love how it's just like Brendan Schaub is just like, he's just such a fucking, he's a punching bag for other comedians, because it's like, you got to where you are because of your comedic friends, not because
him and Bobby Lee are in like this huge feud right now.
Oh, that's right, because of the Kalila thing, and then
wait, Brendan Schaub and Bobby Lee.
I don't know all the details, but I think Schaub like tried to fuck Bobby Lee's wife.
Nice.
Sort. It's a really big, complicated thing. So Bobby Lee's so Kalila, and they broke up too recently.
Wait, but Brendan Schaub has the Mexican wife.
Yeah, no, he cheats on his wife.
Oh, okay. That's not cool.
But it was
move. Disavow.
But yeah, Brendan Schaub sucks, and there's actually a compilation on YouTube of other comedians talking shit about Brendan Schaub.
I mean, he sucks.
It feels very kind of anti-Rogan of him, like of Rogan. It feels very, I should say, un-Rogan of Rogan.
Yeah, but I think he is a guy who gets blinded by friendship.
Yeah.
Like that, yeah, I don't know. He doesn't seem like, you're right. It just surprises me because you would think that it's good as friends as they are. It's like he feels like such a comedic purist all the time. Like you need to put the work in. You don't do special until a decade or something, like whatever he says. Or
more than that.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Like this is all new to me. Like I kind of got back into comedy because of listening to comedian podcasts. Really. Yeah. Because I don't live in a place where there's a lot of like comedy shows. I have been to some in AC, which are awesome. Like I love live comedy. I feel like I have a lot more fun than other people. Like I would go to there's this great, just kind of, I'm gonna call it a dive bar, but like a local bar in New Orleans. Pat, if you're over there, it's Carrollton Station. I don't think we went when you visited me, but like though, like Hannibal Buress just like showed up once. Like it's very cool. Nice. And they do and the quality does range when they do I guess like any open mic. I mean, one girl just got up there and just like held the mic and like elbows out and just kind of swayed and like could not. But I give her a lot of credit. Like I give her, she got up there. It's fine. Yeah. And then some guys are very funny and some girls are very funny.
Yeah.
But no, just the guys. It's okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking, people.
Well, they're participating.
Oh, I'll give him that. There's a Norm Macdonald's. He was on some podcast. I mean, obviously, this is probably 8 or 9 years ago or something. But they were talking about female comics, and they're like, yeah, female comics they're not that funny compared to dudes. And like, oh, but Sarah Silverman. Like, oh yeah, no, she's great. I love Sarah Silverman. Yeah, no. And then one guy's like, yeah, nobody's funnier than Sarah Silverman. And Norm's like, yeah, except for dudes. Any dude.
Yeah. I know Sarah Silverman lead like you could only make one too many like bloody abortion jokes, and it's like I get it. Like I don't know. I feel like you can only. I don't like and I feel like there was that mid 2010s. I don't know if it's still going on. That kind of girl boss lean into it comedy for women. It's like we shit too. Like we also make like gross. It's like, yeah, but you don't have to. Like,
right. Well, it's also like,
I think they do have to shit. Actually,
no, I know. But about it. Like it's which I like the movie Bridesmaids, but that was a big. And they even make fun of this on Always Sunny. They do an episode about this. It's like it's the girls episode. It's like we're just as gross as men, and it's true. I'm not saying it's not true, but it's just I don't know.
Yeah, it's I got to see Norm Macdonald perform at the San Jose Improv years ago, and they had, I mean, like the difference between like someone who's been doing comedy for 4 or 5 years versus someone who's been doing it for decades is night and day. Like it's crazy, it's scary the difference. And so it's just a bunch of local comics and stuff. But they had this one millennial chick, and she's doing like the sort of droll, delivery and with super gross. But she was like, yeah, so I was fucking this one Silicon Valley guy, and then he like came on my tits, and like that's like literally a thing now. And it's like, oh god, like this it's so bad. It's so it wasn't even like, oh, that's inappropriate. It's just like, it's just so dumb. It's just like, if you do gross out humor as a woman, it's like, at least do something like, oh, I didn't know the female body can do that sort of shit. Like, but it's just like, yeah,
anytime your punchline is that's a thing now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's not a good sign.
Yeah. But yeah, no, you mentioned about how Joe Rogan can kind of be blinded by friendship, where it's like, you know, he'll rip apart comedians for stealing jokes, but then like when it comes, remember when Amy Schumer got accused of stealing jokes? Yeah. But he's friends with her, and he's also like, well, you know, she's had other writers write for her, and I think it's just a case of parallel thinking. And it's like, you know,
he's friends with Amy Schumer.
Is he?
Yeah. No.
I
don't think he's ever had her on the show, but
I didn't know that.
One of her specials just completely bombed. I remember I was in law school. It was like a big deal that this was coming out.
Oh, the leather special?
I don't remember, because she had done one that I think was really good. I didn't see it. And she was like the new thing. Yeah. So there's a lot of anticipation for this next one. And I know people who are like fans of her, like, no, that sucked. It was like unwatchable.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of hers.
Yeah.
I thought she had
Hannah Gatsby. There's a comedian.
Oh yeah, she's wonderful.
Who's that?
She's that Australian lesbian comedian who does like the TED Talk / comedy special.
Oh, was it just like preaching?
Yeah.
Yes, but like the first one, she was like, it's Nanette. She was talking about like being a rape survivor, and like she's crying, she's getting all passionate, and it's like, I remember that I didn't make it that far. Yeah, like the commercial for it would like feature like this inspirational like Hallmark movie piano music over. I was like, I don't want to hear that over a comedy special commercial. Like,
yeah, there's definitely a market for that. I hope it's a shrinking market. And
my sister thinks she's a genius.
I really can't stand the preaching for clapter.
Yeah, clapter.
Comedy, which is just what SNL basically is now. Once in a while, I think they'll have something funny and original.
Once in a while, they will. Like sometimes, like they'll do a bit that's like, oh, like you're actually kind of like trying to like unify rather than just kind of like, Trump is bad. I don't know if you guys saw this one. I think it's from earlier this year or last year, but it was like a game show. And it was like, are they Republican or Democrat? And so they brought out, like, they bring a random person and they would say a statement. And then it's like, can you tell if they're Democrat or Republican? And the point of it was like how similar the left and the right can be. So they brought out one person and then he's like, I like to shop at farmers markets. And like, oh, because you want to or because you have to? But they're just kind of like, just, you know, like blue collar or hipster sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like, oh, that's actually kind of funny. That's actually kind of cool.
And they had one of those also that I thought was clever when like 2015, 2016 Trump, where they had Tom Hanks was playing a MAGA guy on Black Jeopardy.
Yeah.
And it was showing like how similar, which is like true, like how similar a lot of black people and like blue collar white people, like middle America are. And then that, of course, the punchline, which is very funny, the categories are like, and the jokes are like not trusting the government and liking big women and praying and like Tyler Perry movies, and he's like, I love any movie where you can pray and laugh in the same thing, like so like that. But then, of course, the final category is lives that matter, which is funny. Like that's a funny punchline, and sometimes it's like, well, it's fun while it lasted, Doug.
and I remember his answer was like, well, I got a lot of opinions on this, and they're like, well, it's nice knowing you, buddy.
Sure you do.
My whole thing with SNL is that it's never currently as bad as people make it seem, and it was never as funny as people pretend it used to be.
Yeah.
I don't know someone said this, I don't remember who, but it's like everyone just thinks SNL was the best when they were like 14 years old. Like whenever you were 14, that's when SNL was the best. Which I don't know, like what would that have been for us? We're all around the same age within a few years of each other.
That like Will Arnett, Amy Poehler,
Will
Ferrell. It would have been post Will Ferrell, I think.
Well, post Will Ferrell by a little.
Yeah.
But yeah, Amy Poehler, Tina, it was like the women
Jimmy
are in charge
Fallon.
now.
So
which
Jimmy
I guess
Fallon, like Will Arnett and those guys, Fred Armisen, Bill Hader.
Yeah, and I think those guys are great. I think Tina Fey's hilarious, and Amy Poehler, I think they're fantastic. So I guess it kind of holds up. It's just you're at that age.
Like if you go back and watch like the vaunted original SNL, like it's not that incredible. It's funny.
It was very
There's
different.
some really good stuff, but
I started that.
There's also some stinkers.
on was it Hulu that you can get all of them, or you could?
Probably.
And I said, I'm gonna watch every episode of SNL. I started in 1975, and dude, it is a totally different show. It's like they have just kind of acts. Like I remember they had some woman come out and she just does like a one person, like she's kind of like miming.
Yeah.
But like pretending she's in a dance and there's like a guy who she thinks cute, but like it's not funny at all. It's just acting. It's good acting, but it's not funny. And they had the like a lot of puppet things, like Jim Henson type looking stuff. Like there's called like the Croods or the Kroogs, something like that, with like dinosaurish monsters. Like really different than what it is now. And what's his name was supposed to Carlin was supposed to be they considered making just like the all-time host.
The 80s was pretty bad though. I think it's pretty unanimous that the 80s of SNL was largely pretty bad. I mean maybe early 80s was good.
Who were like the top?
I think it was Eddie Murphy, and that was it, right?
Yeah, Eddie Murphy, like in the early 80s, and after that, I remember there's this one sketch from like the late 80s, back when Robert Downey Jr., like when he was in like the first part of his, like the high part of his career, he was in some weird sketch. You could tell that they were running out of ideas. It was a weird sketch where he was like suitcase boy. Like he was just like a giant suitcase and like his head was sticking out, and then there's like a suitcase girl, and they're interacting, they're like in the hotel lobby or something, and somebody just left them there. But it's just sort of like, oh, like it's two suitcases, they're talking to each other. It was just so bizarre.
They did too much coke that week and just like couldn't make sense of what they were writing down.
And then Robert Downey Jr. and then he does like some weird soliloquy. It was just like I don't know. It was just like it was probably just like the last, like the deadline for like, oh, we got to get one more act in here sort of thing.
Yeah.
Listen, I mean, SNL was like the thing that made SNL great when it came out was that it was different and subversive.
Yeah.
They didn't have things like that.
Right.
But now, like you can't honestly look me in the eye and tell me that any one season of SNL has ever been better than Chappelle's Show.
Right.
Oh,
you know?
No, never.
Or even like Key and Peele.
And SNL's the opposite now. It's just like kind of basic establishment, center left, you're saying the talking points. Sometimes it's kind of comical, you know. Like I remember I watched, because once in a while it still has that pull on me where like if I see it on and I'm like finished a movie Saturday night or something, or like I will put it on. So like maybe this will be that, because I do believe in like I always think live entertainment will be a thing. Like I don't care how many COVIDs there are. I tell my girlfriend this, who's a stage actress, like there will always, like, theater has existed since the Greeks, like the ancient Greeks. There will always be theater. I think there will always be live music. There will always be live comedy. That's great. Like and so I do appreciate that. But so many times, like I think the last episode I watched this, I mean, it shows how long. I think it was like after the 2020 election. They did the whole thing like Blue Georgia, like oh, Georgia's Democrats now, because they won by a few thousand votes, and now it's like the jokes are all, oh, you know, I'm the Southern guy, but I believe in trans rights, and it's like oh, grown, dude. It's gonna flip back.
Right.
Or like when after Hillary lost, when they just had Kate McKinnon singing Hallelujah.
Oh yeah,
that was dude, come on.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like that was not. There was no intent for that to be funny. What was funny when they would do like Sarah Palin and have Sarah Palin on, like that was funny. Yeah. And like you had by your audience's standard, like a pretty despised politician, and you have that like that's actually subversive.
John McCain's been on SNL a few times too, I think.
Yeah, John McCain kind of sucks.
Yeah, but you know, that's cool him to go on.
Sucked.
Well, I loved SNL when I was a kid, when I was younger, when I was like in the mid 90s. So I was really into like the Norm Macdonald, the David Spade, Chris Farley, like that. That's kind of my.
I watched that Norm Macdonald. What his most recent show was before he died, whatever it was. That bit about the airlines, like I watched that so much.
9/11 Airlines.
Yeah, Pat, do you know this one? I did it on the last episode. He's like, he just like reads the note cards, and with his delivery, he's like, well, for the 6th straight year in a row, JetBlue has voted the best customer service for airlines. You know who's voted last? 9/11 Airlines. And then Nick Swartzen, the guest, he's just like, oh no. He's like, That's a terrible name for an airline. Reminds me of that tragedy. Like, and then they start laughing. He's like, oh, don't laugh at 9/11.
Don't laugh at 9/11.
McClark's like, oh my God.
He's one of the few comedians who can pull off that sort of simplistic humor like that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he had Bobby Lee on his show, and then and Bobby Lee's talking about like his early days as a comic in LA. And he goes, when I first moved to LA, I was living out of my car. I was broke and I didn't have any money. And then Norm goes, both? It's just like, oh man.
Didn't he get kicked off SNL for just too many OJ jokes?
Yeah, well, he got kicked off of Weekend Update.
Oh,
but he started on SNL, but he was like, yeah, but like Weekend Update's my that's the thing that's my bread and butter. Like that's the thing I do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was Don Ohlmeyer who was the head of NBC at the time, and he was friends with OJ. And
I liked the I don't know if they still do with Michael Che. Who else did Weekend Update with him?
Jokes.
The guy who's banging. Yeah,
I think they're funny.
Scarlett Johansson. You do? Yeah, I do too. I think
Che's really funny.
Yeah, I think they're good, but that's like its own thing. Like that's not really like the skits.
Well, Che's also like the head writer of the show.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. Which is weird because I find him so funny on Update.
Yeah, that is weird because he is very funny. I don't know.
No.
You guys want to talk about anything else?
No, I'm getting sick of this conversation.
Yeah, I'm tired of you guys.
Yeah.
But
I don't really like either of you.
Comedy Store, November 16th is when it is.
Oh,
awesome.
All
Ben,
right.
you gonna be here for that, buddy?
I will not, but enjoy.
All right.
Break a leg, Pat.
No.
I will.
All right, guys. That was
All right.
fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. It was a good time.
Yeah.
It was okay.
Yeah. No, it's just
Not as wild as the last one, but still fun.
Yeah. The next one we'll pregame the podcast.
Yeah.
Like I did this episode. All right. Oh,
all right,
Pat,
everybody.
My mom listened to our last episode and the one in LA. And
how'd she like it?
She loves it, and she was just like, I can't believe Pat said that.
Which one? Which
well,
thing?
I don't like to say it.
Come on, it's fine.
The one about your mom.
Oh, wait, I made a joke about my mom dying?
Yeah. And she's like, oh my God. I can't believe he said that. I'm like, well, stay tuned. That's TRM. I'm like, and if you listen,
it's not coming back to life. So the material's not changing.
And then I'm like, if you listen closer, you hear me go, oh no.
I don't even remember what I said, but I do vaguely remember saying.
You start because the thing is that because I know you, unlike like I knew you not like Joe did. Like I've known you longer. Like I knew where it was going. So when you talk about how the cars was registered in your mom's name and you were getting tickets for it, and I'm like, oh no. Like I know where this is going.
On that note.
On that note.
All right.
Well, fight the crits. Pat,
thanks,
fight the
Mrs.
crits.
Alessia, by the way.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody.
All right. Goodbye.